November 17, 1972, Vienna, Austria. Quincy Robbins watched his opponent's hand hover over the white bishop. The International Invitational Chess Tournament had drawn players from across the divided world, an unusual gathering of East and West under one ornate Viennese ceiling. Through the haze of cigarette smoke, he studied Vasily Petrov's face, looking for tells. The Soviet grandmaster had dark circles under his eyes, suggesting he'd spent the night reviewing games rather than sleeping. "Your move, Mr. Robbins," the referee reminded gently. Quincy nodded, shifting his weight on the uncomfortable wooden chair. At 42, he was past his prime as a chess player, but still respectable enough to qualify for international tournaments. His day job as a cultural attaché at the American Embassy in Vienna paid the bills, while chess remained his lifelong passion. He moved his knight, setting a trap that wouldn't be obvious for 3 more moves. Petrov's eyebrows twitched slightly, the only indication he sensed something amiss. "Mr. Robbins," a voice whispered near his ear. Quincy looked up to see Thomas Welch, his supervisor from the embassy. "When you finish, there's someone who'd like to meet you." Quincy nodded absently, his focus returning to the board. He believed deeply that chess, unlike the political world he inhabited professionally, offered objective truth. On the 64 squares, there were no politics, only the pure mathematics of decision and consequence. 2 hours later, having secured a draw against the higher-ranked Soviet, Quincy followed Welch through the Baroque hallways of the Hofburg Palace. They entered a small anteroom where a middle-aged man with graying temples stood examining a painting. "Quincy Robbins, this is Richard Hayes from Washington," Welch said, then promptly excused himself, closing the door behind him. "Outstanding match," Hayes said, extending his hand. "You nearly had him." "Nearly isn't winning," Hayes smiled. "Sometimes a draw accomplishes more than a victory." He gestured to a pair of chairs. "Please." Quincy sat, instantly wary. In 7 years at the State Department, he'd learned to recognize agency personnel. Hayes had that particular blend of forgettable features and penetrating attention that marked career intelligence officers. "I represent interests at Langley," Hayes confirmed, dropping all pretense. "We have a situation that requires someone with your unique position. I'm a cultural attaché, not an operative." Hayes nodded patiently. "Precisely why you're perfect. The Soviets are using this tournament for something beyond chess. We've intercepted fragments of communications suggesting a major intelligence operation centered around this event. And what does this have to do with me? Your opponent today, Vasily Petrov, he's KGB. Deep cover, but definitely active. We believe he or one of the other Soviet players is here to make contact with a high-level asset." Quincy felt a chill. "You've got the wrong person. I organize art exhibitions and lecture exchanges. Your father was OSS during the war, wasn't he? Before founding Robbins Security Consulting." Quincy stiffened. His father had rarely spoken of his wartime service, but those stories had fascinated him as a boy. "That has nothing to do with me. Your country needs you, Mr. Robbins. We're not asking you to spy. Just observe. Report anything unusual about the Soviet delegation. You already have natural access as a competitor." "And if I refuse?" Hayes's expression remained neutral. "Then we find someone else. But they won't have your background or positioning. More might be at risk." Quincy stared at the ornate ceiling, thoughts racing. He'd always kept his distance from his embassy colleagues' darker activities, maintaining the ethical clarity he valued. Chess was sacred to him, the one arena where East and West could meet as equals. "I need to think about it." "Of course." Hayes handed him a business card for European Cultural Heritage Foundation, with a phone number. "Whatever you decide, don't discuss this with anyone, not even Welch." The following morning, Quincy sat on a bench in the Stat Park, feeding pigeons while contemplating Hayes's proposal. The November air bit through his wool coat. Across the path, a mother pushed a stroller, her breath visible in the cold. He'd spent his career believing in cultural exchange as the antidote to Cold War hostilities. Getting involved in espionage felt like betraying those principles. Yet he couldn't shake the thought that his chess tournament, was being corrupted as a venue for something dangerous. That afternoon, during his match against an East German player, Quincy noticed Petrov engaged in an intense whispered conversation with a tournament official. Nothing overtly suspicious, but the official later approached the Hungarian delegation with what appeared to be revised scheduling information. After the day's matches concluded, Quincy found himself in the hotel bar, nursing a scotch when Greta Garrison slid onto the adjacent stool. "Congratulations on your win today," she said, ordering a gin and tonic in flawless German. Greta was a chess journalist for an international magazine. American, early 30s, with sharp features and sharper questions. They'd met at tournaments across Europe over the past 3 years. "The Sicilian defense saves the day again," he replied. "Your favorite escape route." She smiled, accepting her drink. "I saw you talking with Richard Hayes yesterday." Quincy nearly choked on his scotch. "You know him?" "I know he's not who he pretends to be." Her voice dropped. "Be careful, Quincy. This tournament is more complicated than it appears." Before he could respond, she nodded toward the entrance where 3 Soviet players had arrived. "Petrov has requested an interview with me tomorrow. Any questions you think I should ask?" Quincy studied her face, wondering if her appearance was coincidental, or if she too was playing a game beyond the chessboard. "Ask him about his opening strategy against the American delegation." She raised an eyebrow but nodded. That night, Quincy called the number on Hayes's card from a public telephone several blocks from his hotel. "I'll help," he said when Hayes answered, "but I need to understand what I'm looking for." "Good man," Hayes replied. "Meet me at Café Central tomorrow at 3 p.m. Order the Zahurtorta." The next day, between matches, Quincy sat in the historic cafe where Lenin and Trotsky had once played chess. Hayes appeared precisely on time, sliding into the chair opposite without greeting. "We believe the Soviets are using the tournament to pass information about NATO defense systems," Hayes said quietly after the waiter departed. "Someone with access to classified material is meeting with their handler." The chess tournament provides perfect cover. Players, officials, journalists, and spectators from both sides of the Iron Curtain, all in one place. What exactly am I looking for? Unusual interactions, pattern disruptions, anyone showing interest in players beyond the game itself. Focus on Petrov and Nikolai Baranov in particular. The journalist, Greta Garrison. What do you know about her? Hayes's expression remained neutral. "Why do you ask?" "She mentioned seeing us together. Warned me to be careful. Ms. Garrison has been covering chess tournaments for years." Beyond that, I couldn't say. His tone suggested otherwise. "Trust no one, Mr. Robbins. Observe everything." Over the next 3 days, Quincy developed a new awareness of the tournament environment. He noticed Petrov taking the same unusual route through the exhibition hall each morning, passing close to the American delegation's tables. The Hungarian team captain frequently disappeared during matches, returning with fresh coffee but taking far longer than the journey warranted. Most concerning was Baranov's apparent friendship with Walter Coleman, an American physics professor serving as an alternate on the U.S. team. Quincy had seen them sharing meals twice, deep in conversation that halted when others approached. After his match on the 4th day, Quincy found Greta waiting by the coat check. "Walk with me?" she asked. Outside, snowflakes drifted lazily onto the imperial architecture. They strolled in silence until reaching a less crowded street. "Your friend Hayes," she finally said. "He approached you because of the tournament. didn't he? I'm not sure what you mean. She stopped walking. Don't play naive, Quincy. It doesn't suit you. She glanced around before continuing. The East Germans are watching you now. Whatever Hayes asked you to do, they've noticed. How would you know that? Because it's my job to know. She met his eyes directly. Just like it's your job to organize cultural exchanges, not spy on chess players. I'm not. Stop. Listen to me very carefully. There's more happening than Hayes is telling you. The Stasi have someone inside this tournament tracking American intelligence activity. And how exactly would you have this information? Quincy asked, suspicion mounting. The same way I know that you graduated fourth in your class at Yale, that your father ran operations in Berlin before founding his security firm, and that you were recruited by CIA twice before but declined. Quincy felt his world tilting. Who are you? Someone who doesn't want to see you become collateral damage. She pressed a folded paper into his hand. If you see this man make contact with Petrov, don't report it to Hayes. Call this number instead. Before he could respond, she kissed his cheek, a casual European farewell for any observers, and walked away. That night, Quincy couldn't sleep. He unfolded Greta's paper to find a sketch of a man he recognized, one of the tournament officials, and a Vienna phone number. Was Greta CIA, a Soviet plant, or something else entirely? The certainties of his life were dissolving around him. On the 6th day of the tournament, Quincy arrived early, watching the participants filter in. Coleman, the American physicist, entered deep in conversation with Hayes, which confirmed Quincy's suspicions about the professor's role. Why else would a cultural officer be speaking with a supposed academic? During his match against a French grandmaster, Quincy noticed Petrov slip something, a folded paper or small envelope, to the tournament official from Greta's drawing. The exchange was so natural, so seamless, he would never have caught it without knowing to watch. His hands trembling slightly, he moved his rook, sacrificing it needlessly. His opponent's eyebrows rose in surprise at the amateur mistake. "Are you feeling unwell, Mr. Robbins?" the referee asked. "Just a headache," Quincy replied, forcing himself to focus on the game, which he eventually lost. After the match, he found a public telephone booth and called Hayes's number, but received no answer. After hesitating, he dialed the number Greta had provided. A woman's voice answered, "Antiquariat Burgas." I'm calling about a chess book," Quincy improvised. "We close in 30 minutes, the voice replied and hung up. Quincy hurried across Vienna to the address, finding a small antiquarian bookshop tucked between a bakery and a tobacconist. The bell jangled as he entered. An elderly woman looked up from the counter. "We're closing soon." "I called about a chess book," Quincy repeated. The woman nodded toward a back room. Inside, Greta sat at a small table, a chessboard set up before her. "You saw the exchange," she said without looking up. "Yes. What is this place? Who are you really?" "Sit down, Quincy." She gestured to the chair opposite. "This shop belongs to friends. As for me, I work for people interested in preventing unnecessary escalation." "CIA? No. Though I've worked with them occasionally." She moved a pawn. "I'm with a multi-agency task force. The Soviets aren't the only ones with plans for this tournament." She explained that both superpowers were using the chess tournament for intelligence operations. The Soviets were indeed running an operation, but it wasn't what Hayes had described. They're trying to identify and extract a defector, a KGB officer who wants out. Hayes and his team are here to prevent that defection because the officer knows about a CIA operation inside the Soviet Union. Why tell me this? Because you're being used as a distraction. While Hayes has you watching Petrov and the Soviets, Coleman is actually meeting with a Stasi officer, passing NATO defense information. Quincy felt sick. That's impossible. Hayes specifically told me to watch for unusual interactions with Americans. Classic misdirection. Coleman is their asset. The CIA learned the Soviets planned to use this tournament for the defection, so they set up their own operation as cover. If anything goes wrong, all eyes will be on the Soviet team. Prove it. Greta slid a manila envelope across the table. Inside were photographs of Coleman meeting with known East German intelligence officers in Berlin 3 months earlier. Why me? Why are you telling me this? Because you're the perfect cutout. Clean record, legitimate reason to be at the tournament, family history in intelligence but no direct involvement yourself. If caught, you're a private citizen who can be disavowed. Quincy stared at the chessboard between them, seeing the strategic positioning of every piece. What do you want from me? Help us get the KGB defector out safely and expose Coleman's operation. And if I refuse? Then walk away now. Go back to arranging art exhibitions. But understand that people might die because of what happens in the next 48 hours. Quincy studied her face, looking for deception. The official who met with Petrov today. Who is he? Mikhail Kornev. Former KGB, now working as a cutout for the defector. The information passed today was confirmation of extraction details. Quincy rubbed his temples. I need to think. You have until tomorrow morning. The extraction is happening during the semi-final matches. She stood. If you decide to help, wear a blue tie. I'll find you. The following morning, Quincy knotted his navy blue tie, the weight of his decision pressing on him. He no longer knew who to trust, but the evidence Greta had shown him aligned with his own observations better than Hayes's explanation. At the tournament, Hayes intercepted him before he reached the playing area. Walk with me, he instructed, leading Quincy to a quiet corridor. You saw something yesterday. It wasn't a question. Petrov passed something to an official. Hayes nodded. Did you follow up on the official? Lost him in the crowd. Quincy lied. Stay focused today. The semifinals will have fewer players, less distraction. Watch Coleman and Baranov particularly. Quincy nodded, his decision crystallizing. Of course. As Hayes turned to leave, Quincy added, By the way, I meant to ask, what's your interest in Professor Coleman? Hayes paused almost imperceptibly. Standard procedure to monitor all American participants. Why do you ask? Just curious. He seems to spend a lot of time with the Eastern Bloc players. Cultural exchange at its finest, Hayes replied with a thin smile. During the semi-final matches, Quincy wasn't playing but stayed to observe. From his vantage point, he could see both Petrov's match and the spectator area where Coleman sat near the East German delegation. Greta appeared beside him, camera in hand, playing her role as journalist. The defector is Kornev himself, she whispered while pretending to check her equipment. He'll move during the mid-game break. Coleman plans to meet his contact at the same time. What do you need me to do? Distract Hayes. Get him away from the tournament floor for at least 10 minutes. The opportunity came when Hayes stepped into the hallway to smoke. Quincy approached him, feigning concern. I think I saw Coleman pass something to Baranov near the restrooms, he said urgently. Hayes's eyes narrowed. Show me. Quincy led him away from the main hall, toward the opposite side of the building. As they reached the restrooms, Quincy apologized. I must have been mistaken. They were just here. Wait here, Hayes ordered, entering the restroom to check. Quincy immediately headed for a service corridor Greta had shown him on a building map. He slipped through a maintenance door and made his way back to the main hall through a roundabout route. By the time he returned, chaos had erupted. Tournament officials were trying to restore order as players and spectators clustered in confused groups. Coleman was nowhere to be seen, but Quincy spotted Petrov arguing intensely with the head referee. Greta appeared at his side, gripping his arm. "It worked," she whispered. "Kornov is safe." But Coleman realized something was wrong and ran. "Hayes's men are after him." "What happens now?" "Now we leave. Separately. You go first. Go directly to your embassy and report everything Hayes asked you to do. Claim you became suspicious and decided to report to your official supervisor. And you? I'll be fine." She pressed a key into his palm. "Train station locker 47. There's evidence about Coleman and the NATO intelligence breach. Your embassy will want it. Will I see you again?" She smiled sadly. "No, but you did the right thing today." Before Quincy could respond, shouting erupted near the exit. Hayes appeared, scanning the crowd, his face tight with controlled fury. "Go," Greta urged. "Now." Quincy slipped through the crowd toward a side exit, heart pounding. Outside, he hailed a taxi and directed it to the American embassy, rehearsing his story. He would tell the truth, most of it anyway, about Hayes's recruitment and Coleman's suspicious behavior. 3 hours later, after a grueling debriefing with the embassy's security officer and a secured call to Washington, Quincy sat alone in a waiting room. His diplomatic status had protected him from worse questioning, but his career was effectively over. Best-case scenario, he'd be transferred back to Washington and quietly moved to an administrative position. The door opened, and a senior embassy official entered with a grave expression. "Mr. Robbins, we've confirmed some of your information. Coleman was arrested attempting to cross into Czechoslovakia. He had classified NATO defense documents in his possession. And Hayes, being questioned, it appears he was running an unauthorized operation." Quincy nodded, relieved but exhausted. "There's one more thing," the official continued. "You mentioned a woman named Greta Garrison? The chess journalist, yes. We have no record of an American citizen by that name matching your description. The magazine she claimed to work for has never employed anyone by that name." Quincy felt a chill. "Then who was she?" "We don't know, but this was recovered from the train station locker." He placed a folder on the table. Inside was the evidence on Coleman, but also a handwritten note. "Some games have no winners, only survivors. You played well. Gee." 15 years later, on November 9, 1987, Quincy Robbins stood among the crowd at the Berlin Wall as people began to break through the concrete division that had defined the Cold War era. His diplomatic career had recovered somewhat. He now worked at the consulate in West Berlin, still arranging cultural exchanges, though under more supervision than before. As Germans from both sides embraced in the shadow of the crumbling wall, he noticed a familiar figure across the square. Older now, her hair shorter, but unmistakably Greta. Their eyes met briefly. She nodded once, then disappeared into the celebrating crowd. Quincy never knew for certain who Greta really was. CIA, KGB, or perhaps something else entirely. The Cold War had created a world where truth was as fragmented as the Berlin Wall now being dismantled before him. But he had learned one enduring lesson from both chess and espionage. Sometimes, a draw accomplishes more than a victory.